Hi, my name is Matt Chapdelaine, and we're going to do a dive into building our own Harada grid. What I wanted to do was to build this out as if I was going to be your coach or if I was going to be your mentor. What we're going to do at the beginning is we're going to set a big, audacious goal. And I want to do this for individuals because I have a funny feeling that if you're a very motivated person, you're going to be intentional about doing this type of work. And I thought that walking you through each of the steps might prove useful rather than just going over it in a grand overview. So this is how you'll go about building Harada Grid. You'll start in the middle of your Harada Grid right here where it says your audacious sport or team goal. So this goal for our purposes today, we're going to change this from your audacious sport or team goal to the very best player in my league. There we go. In my league. So if I'm going to be the very best player in my league, I want to understand how I can accomplish that via stamina and skill and strength and SPAQ, but I'm also going to be evaluating my character, my core value, my convictions, and my commitments. So we're going to go step by step. We're going to build this out as best we can. We're going to follow the prompts. And if your goal is similar to this or maybe a little bit more specific to this, that's going to be very useful. I wouldn't recommend making it as vague as this. I would describe what it means to be the very best player in my league. And how you can do that is you can write a new note and get into some of the nitty gritty. So the very best player in my league is a stat leader in all position specific stats, and in brackets I'll put rank 1 to 5. Got to be in the top 5 in all of the sport position specific stats. So let's put that as one of our things to make us the very best player in my league. My team has improved their win-loss record. So I'm so meaningful to the success of my team that I've helped to improve our win-loss record, and you can be very specific about that. So let's say your team is normally a 500 team. You guys are just a winning team. We're going to move up to 750 plus. Okay, so that's going to be part of our goal in being the very best player in our league. And again, I'm making these up, but there's going to be stuff that's very specific to you, and I want you to lean in. So when we talk about like being a stat leader, write out the various stats. I don't want to get too specific on sports because there's going to be a lot of different types of athletes using this tool. So this is generic right now, but go ahead and try to make that very specific. In addition to being the very best player in my league, I'm probably going to need to be a leader on my team, which is going to look like earning trust and playing time, having an impact or influence on my teammates. And the way that we can measure this is the starters on my team crack the top 20 in stats. So if we are truly the very best player in our league, it's not just that we're having an individual performance that's outdoing everybody else's. The very best player in your league probably also has the type of influence that makes everybody else on their team better. So I would look to have a healthy number of starters on my team cracking the top 20 in stats, and that would be a good indicator of my leadership and my influence. And then it can be a bunch of other metrics that you're going to put into here, but as specific as you can get with this is going to make this a lot more useful to you. So if being the very best player in your league is important to you, that's great. Other stretch goals could be making the national team. Let's say you're a college athlete that would like to make a national team or a junior national team. This could be a great stretch goal for you. Maybe it's playing professionally in the sport that you're currently playing in. Maybe you're in middle school or high school, and the stretch goal you have for this is earning a scholarship to play sports at the highest level you can attain, and then defining what that would look like based on your preference in terms of what level you'd like to compete at, and then going from there. So the more specific you can be, the better. That's kind of the point of this. Once you have that, we're going to go in order. We're going to do 1 through 8 of these grids, and we're just going to take it one at a time. So if I'm going to be the very best player in my league, regardless of what sport you play, then we're going to start off with stamina. So when we look at the stamina, it gives us a few different cues as to how we should be filling out these squares, and I've color-coded it to make it simple. But your bottom 3 should be lower cost fitness or endurance metrics that can serve both as sort of a conditioning activity that you do on a regular basis, but it also should be measurable. It's good if it's a little bit lower in terms of load so that you're not breaking your body down, but it's something that can be a way that you prove that your stamina is being maintained or improving over the course of the year. So for this, I'm going to just make some up because they're applicable to a lot of different athletes, but this could be something that would be valuable to you as well. So regardless of what sport you play, everybody, just about everybody, can learn how to skip. So we're going to have a skipping metric. We're going to have a spin, so a stationary bike. And then we may have something that's a little bit more sport specific. So I'm going to write down sport specific. And we're going to go through each of these. We're going to try to be as detailed as possible. So again, you're going to right click the square, add a new note, and then we're going to go into this. So a great skipping ritual that we use at our level, at the university level, is a 3 times 30-second skipping test with 60-second rests. Okay, this is a great way for you to warm up for a practice. It's also a good little cool down endurance activity. It's not too aggressive in terms of load. You're not going to be exceptionally sore. This is something I would do at the start of my week, and I can also measure this. So the way that I would measure this is reps total over the course of those 3 sets. And if you're good, so great would be over 80 reps per set or 240 total. Okay, that'd be a pretty good one to reach for, but you may not be there right now. Good is definitely over 70 reps per set. That's going to come out to 210 total. And then fair or decent, good enough would be something like 60 reps per set. It's going to be different for different levels. It's going to come out to 180. Okay, so what I would be looking at is wherever I'm at right now, maybe you're much lower than this and maybe not very good at skipping right now. Great opportunity for you to get better at it. It has a lot of advantages. So wherever you're at, you're going to measure that basically once a week. You're going to have that on the exact same day, and I'm going to tell myself exactly when I'm doing it. So maybe I'm going to say every Monday. Every Monday, I'm going to test this, and I'm going to do this after practice. So every Monday after practice, it's not going to cost me very much time. It's 90 plus 90 plus 90 gets you to about 4.5 minutes, I believe. So it's less than 5 minutes total to get the whole thing done. And I can do that every day, every Monday after practice. And the better I do with this, maybe I also add in just skipping to my warm up every day, so I increase my ability to do this. But the better I do with this, or the closer I can keep myself above a threshold, the better it's going to be. So once I get good at this, I might say to myself, okay, fit for me means being over 220 throughout the year. So fit equals being over 220 throughout the year. That's going to be my indicator. There we go. I have one already written down. Here's another one. We have Kaiser bikes at the school that I work at, and those Kaiser bikes can measure distance. The distance is not like a true to form distance. If you have a Kaiser bike, this is one that'll work for you. But even if you don't have a Kaiser bike, hopefully you have a bike where you can actually measure certain things. We're going to just talk about it in terms of the Kaiser bike. So the Kaiser bike gives you readouts when you have a monitor on the bike. It gives you a readout of your RPM, your watts. It gives you about an estimate of your calories based on a generic human being. But it also gives you things like your gear and then a distance number. So the distance number is every 0.1 equals 20 revolutions. So if I were to do 100 RPM, that every minute, that would mean every minute I would be getting 0.5 of distance. Okay, so for every 20 revolutions, it's 100 divided by 20 equals 0.5 there for that. So every minute would be 0.5. So what I'm going to do with this test is I'm going to set an upper threshold. I'm going to say, okay, well, maybe I want to be on the bike for like 4 to 5 minutes. So I'm going to say I'm going to travel 2.0 distance units, and I want to be able to do that in 4 minutes. 4 minutes would be an indicator that I'm averaging 100 RPM per 4 minutes. So that would be a good little 4 minute indicator. If you're in a sport that requires a little bit more endurance than just a little bit of a 4 minute burst, like you're not a shift work kind of athlete, maybe you play a more endurance-based sport, you might set this to 4.0 distance, and again, units, and 8 minutes would mean you're averaging 100. My spelling, holy smokes, guys. I'll fix that up so I don't hear about it in the comments. RPMs for 8 minutes. Now, if you're able to be under 8 minutes or under 4 minutes in each of these, that would be a really good indicator of fitness, because that means that you're over 100 RPM sustained for that entire time. Now, getting those RPMs is a little easier if the gear is a little easier. So I'd also set a bit of a standard in terms of the gear. On the Kaiser bikes, what we do when we do this test is our female athletes are going to go at gear 11, and then our male athletes will go at gear 14. And that's usually good. If you're a high school athlete that's just kind of building up, I might do one less than this. So high school would be gear 10. And in this, it might be high school gear 13. You can fiddle with that to suit your needs, but this is just a great opportunity for you to do something that's very, very low impact. It's an easy test. It only takes 4 or 8 minutes, depending on what it is that you're doing. Whatever this is, that's going to be great for you. And maybe your threshold for fit is going to be under those times. Threshold is less than time above. And then your upper threshold to be sure that you're actually fit is no more than, we'll do the 2 different distances. So no more than 5 minutes for the shorter distance, or no more than, we'll go 10 minutes for the long distance. I'm also going to have this set up. I want to make sure that I have this at a certain point during the week. I think day 2 in the week is typically good. So if your day 1 is sort of a skipping test, day 2 is a good day to do your spin test. You could also do this the day after games. It's a good way for you to kind of get your legs to flush out a little bit. So it's your choice. We're going to just pretend that the athlete doing this is going to do this on Tuesdays, and it's going to be after practice. So whatever the coach has for you for conditioning, you're going to do this above and beyond. And this is going to be a good weekly indicator that you're on track with your fitness. If it's improving over time, that's wonderful. It means that your fitness is getting better and better and better. So a sports-specific one, this one's going to be a little hard to keep generic, but I'm going to give you an example just audibly here, and then I'll write down something. So we have, for one of our sports, we have a 20-minute shooting drill. 20 minutes is a fair amount of time, but if you're already going to be going in to do individual work, you might go and work a couple form shots, and then you might work on some ball handling, and then try this 20-minute shooting drill. And that's something that's going to drive your fitness level, and it's going to be a good challenge. The 20-minute shooting drill has so many steps that you have to hit in terms of shorter shots. And then once you've cleared all of those shorter shots, you have the remainder of the 20 minutes to be able to hit as many threes as possible with no rebounder. So you have to go and get your own rebound, and that's what makes it a bit more of a fitness drill. But you could do this type of thing with literally any sport. So it might be in football, I would do my entire passing tree, and I would try to get my entire passing tree done as a receiver in under 3 minutes, let's say. So I would get catches on every angle of cut at all the distances that I want to get those cuts, and I would just go through my entire passing tree as fast as I can as an individual, just have somebody throw me the ball so I can get through that. That'd be a good little sports specific one. There's just so many out there that it's going to be hard to describe this, but how I would add this into my life, my work, is if we have an already preordained time in our training schedule that is for individual periods, I would add to my indie period. So whenever I have time to either go shoot around or work on my own or do a little extra work on my own, that's where I'm going to add this. In some cases, coaches will have a shortened practice at some point during the week just because they're going through game plan or it's a bit of a walkthrough, and maybe that's your time to work a few of these things. In other cases, it may be something that you're doing early in the morning. You have an opportunity in the early part of the day to get some indie period done, and then just add a sort of competitive, measurable, fitnessy, sports specific thing. That's where I would add it. If you're on a team and your team already has something like this, like you have a certain period in practice that is going to be 10 to 20 minutes long, that is already designed to be a high level of intensity, and there's a way that you can measure it, you can also add a metric to a repeated drill. So what that might look like, I'm going to use basketball again, is maybe we always do a game situation that takes about 10 minutes. We run 10 minutes a clock and we just compete and play. I'm going to set up specific stats for myself. So my check scores less than 10 points, and that's going to be my way to drive the effort that I have to make sure that I'm playing really, really hard on defense. Or it might be that you're trying to get as many rebounds as possible. So in that 10 minutes of play, you're trying to establish 10 rebounds at some point in time, 1 rebound a minute. You may have a certain point goal. And so those are all good for basketball. For football, you might be doing the 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill is a really great drill. And for that, it's also very game specific, but you may have a no mistakes clause in your 2-minute drill, or an intensity level, or you would keep track of whether or not you're helping your team to have positive yards, keep track of your score, and help to drive that a little more. Soccer, there may be a short-sided games that you play, and you keep track of good contacts, good passes, nice touch, or good shots on net, or whatever it is that is going to be very specific to you. But I would add these to something that's already built into my life, so I'm not having to create something new. So if I have an indie period, I'm going to add something fitness specific that's measurable. If we have a repeated drill that we do every single week, we know it's going to come every single week, I'm going to find a metric within that, and that's going to be how I measure that. So that's kind of the baseline of stamina. When we take a look, the next up should be your major fitness tests with the team standards. So whatever your fitness test is going to be, you're going to have those. I'm going to put a really, really generic one down. So not every team does a 1-mile run, but a 1 mile is just a good little baseline of fitness. But there's so many other running tests that you could do. You could have repeating 8s. You could have the Cooper test. There's some good long distance runs. There's a 6-lap test. There's all kinds of long distance tests. Whatever your team's long distance test is going to be, it also doesn't have to be a long distance test. Not every fitness metric is measured with long distances. Sometimes it's other things, but there's also interval based tests. So probably one of the more famous ones are the beep or the yo-yo test. There's also 300-meter shuttles. These are just some very common tests. I'm just throwing random ones out there. I have a ton of tests. We have some house-made tests, one that we call the Kelsey test, and a few other ones that we use for our various sports that are a little bit more sport specific. Whatever your test is, you're going to need to put that in here. So whatever that is, and then in the notes, you're going to go and you're going to add in what the team standard is. Okay, you're going to write down what you get. You're also going to write down what you are aiming for and by when. You're going to establish what test scores you want to be hitting or maintaining at various parts of the year. So every 3 months, maybe you test this, or maybe you're testing this every 6 months. Whatever the case is, you're going to have goals for each of those, and that's going to be how you work towards it, or you measure that. I would also write in ways and ideas. I'm going to star this, ways to train for our test. I'm going to tell you right now, the best way to train for a fitness test is to literally play your sport at a high level of intensity. The fitness test should be a metric of your readiness to play your sport at a high level of intensity. So then the very best way to make sure that you're fit for the fitness test is to continue to train in your sport at a high level of intensity. That's probably the best way to stay fit, but you don't have to do that if you're working on a little bit more of a scientific approach. Then you're going to explore all kinds of ways that you can break these pieces down and build yourself up. So with the mile, I would work on my 400-meter splits, and I would work on my 800-meter splits. I would work on doing fartleks, which are sprinting on the straights and jogging on the curves. I would do a whole bunch of different tests. I would actually run 2 miles. I would overdo it so that I have a little bit more endurance than I need for my mile. There's a whole bunch of ways that I would do that for that test. And then for the beep test, I would work portions of the test. So I would go in, and rather than trying to run myself to the end, I would just run the first half of the test, or I would let the first half of the interval timer go, and I would try running the second half of the test, or the next so many intervals of the test, so that I get used to trying to push myself even when I'm not fatigued. So there's a whole bunch of ways that you can work on these different things, and I'm sure your coach has got a lot of creative ways to help you, but you're going to write those things down next. This is where this becomes interesting. The green ones at the top are how we know we're fit. So this is my way of knowing that I'm fit, and you're going to think specifically about your sport, and you're going to write down, this would be an indicator that I'm fit in my sport. So again, it would be things like, if I play football, then it is going to be my ability to make as many plays happen without any mistakes. And that's usually a good indicator of in-game fitness. Another great indicator of in-game fitness for something like basketball is, do I have a good plus minus for the amount of time that I play? Or is my productivity good within the time that I play? Am I getting longer shifts in gameplay? So that type of thing could measure that. In soccer, it could be something like time of possession. If your team is doing a really good job with time of possession, it's sometimes out of your control, but sometimes it's something that you're driving towards. You play a bit of a role in that as well, or even being able to hold the ball. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can measure this. If you have wearables that can track certain things, that's kind of a cool way to measure where you're at in gameplay. So going back to soccer, measuring the total distance that you will run in a practice, and then having goals about that. So if in practice your goal is to run so many kilometers and you don't hit that by the end of practice, then you stay and you continue to run until you hit your kilometer goal. So a good indicator is, I hit a certain number of kilometers in a game of soccer that I'm aiming for, and there's actually stats out there. So like for professional level athletes, you can go and look up your position in soccer and find out how many kilometers that professional level athletes are running within a game, and you can see if you can get close to matching those professional numbers. That's an indicator that you are being involved. You're moving with the shape of your system, and you're being involved in the play as much as possible. There's just so many to write down, but you're going to have to come up with a few on your own, and they should be stats driven. They should be data driven. And it's something that you don't necessarily do ritualistically, but you can go back and look at your stats or look at your tape, and you can find indicators of your fitness. And it may not be that you have one for all three of these. Hopefully you do. But a good way for you to work on this is one that reflects practice, one that reflects games, and then one that reflects sort of the mental, technical, or skill. So if any of these things are waning or falling, then you know that your fitness is kind of also falling. When we start to make more mistakes, we tend to be lacking fitness. And in our game type stats, there's probably some stats that are good indicators of fitness. You can talk to your coach about what a good indicator of fitness would be within your sport, and then a way that you can kind of also do that within practice. I would set little goals for myself in practice. Like in practice, I want to be able to hit so many of this stat. Then you'll work towards that, and you'll kind of have that little game within the game for yourself. Same idea with this. We had a cool one for one of our athletes that plays basketball. Their goal was to get to the free throw line as many times as possible in a game, and they would set little thresholds. They had to do it at least twice per quarter, and by having that for themselves, they push themselves to drive to the basket a little bit more and invite contact. It was kind of a neat one. Not really specific to fitness, but it's just a way to prove that you can kind of create some unique ones. Okay, so now we're going to move over to skill. This is going to be extremely hard to talk about when dealing with very vague sports. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different sports. But again, we're going to look at some fundamentals at the very bottom, maybe 2 skills that set me apart in my position, and then at the top it should be ways that I can see my skill growing within the game. So I should see it showing up in the stats. And I'm actually going to reverse the order here. I'm going to write down, how would I know I'm the very best player in my league? What are the stats that are going to really speak to that? And I'm going to write those stats down. Okay, so whatever those stats are, these 3 stats are going to be the way that I am absolutely positively going to ensure that I'm the very best player in my league. And if I am able to hit these goals, if my gameplay proves that I can hit these goals, what would be the weekly skill that I would want to work on? So just to be generic, we're going to say scoring is a stat that may prove that you're the very best. Passing, ball control, distribution. Okay, so something to do with sharing possession or maintaining possession is usually a stat that you can stat, and then defense is maybe another one that you can stat. So if I wanted to be a well-rounded player, I would have maybe a scoring stat, some kind of possession or passing or distribution stat, and then some type of defensive stat. And then I can go down and create habits. So I'm going to have a fundamental skill that I can do basically every single day, or at least every single week, that's going to help me work on scoring. So I'm going to write down a scoring fundamental. What is going to help me to do that? And then when I go into that, I'm also going to be sure that I add a note, and I want to define what exactly is the drill, what is the goal in terms, what's the target? Like if I'm playing basketball and my scoring is making so many of this type of a shot, then I need to have a number of shots that I want to make. So my goal or my target. And then whether or not I'm doing it daily or weekly. And then I would keep some kind of loose leaf sheet to help me keep track of some of these things. And it's true for any of these brown ones. All these brown ones, I just have a loose leaf sheet just to make sure I'm kind of tracking my habits. Same idea with the passing or ball control distribution. So I'll just put possession here just to make it a little bit simpler for me. What I would do with this one is, let's say it is a passing thing, then it's going to be so many passes to an X. Or if it's a ball control type thing, then I'm going to be working on maybe just being able to hold a ball or to dribble or whatever the case may be. It may be in football, it might be a number of catches, or working on my ability to maintain connection on the ball. So making sure that I'm tucking it well and putting it away. And then on defense, not every sport has, you play both ways, but for instance, on defense, it could be that you're going to do so many defensive slides in basketball, or in defense, in soccer, you're going to have somebody dribble the ball and you're going to try to dispossess them. Or if you are a defender in football, you might do one-on-ones with the receivers, and you're not done your one-on-ones until you physically have broken up or disrupted so many passes. So something along those lines. And then these two are going to be a lot more position specific. So in addition to having these fundamentals squared away, there's probably something that makes you very unique. It's kind of your bread and butter. It's going to be the thing that distinguishes you from other players who play your sport and your position. So these are going to be skills that you already drill in practice, or they're going to be other things that you want to work on a regular basis that you can measure and you can track. So a post player might work on post moves for basketball. A keeper might have a drill that they do in soccer that's all about getting so many saves or working angles. There's so many different things that it could be. You're going to have to be a little creative with this and write these ones down. I'm going to leave these ones blank for now. Moving on to strength. Okay, strength. Our bottom 3 things are going to be sort of the foundational areas of strength from my perspective. You may have a strength coach who thinks things differently, but for me, I think that every test should be measurable. I think that the core stability and body weight strength are definitely the foundation of all strength. So on a weekly basis, is there a way that you can measure those things? And so I'm just going to write that down: core, stability, and body weight. And in the core, there are a gajillion ways for you to measure core, but probably none as simple as just doing a plank. Okay, so a plank for time, and I'm going to have a threshold for what I want to be able to hit every week, and an indicator of the progress that I want to make, and a low threshold that I never want to be worse than. So something that I'm never going to be worse than when it comes to my plank. But there's so many other ways that you could work on core, improve core. A side bridge is a great way to improve your core. You could have some kind of core activity done to a metronome or something that keeps your beats per minute. There's a ton. So whatever your core exercise is for your team or one that you want to do for yourself, I would go and explore exercises and tests that test core, and then choose one that you can do on a weekly basis that's not going to disrupt your ability to perform. Stability would be another one that I would want to do. A very, very simple stability test that is used for golf is a single leg balance test where you hold your knee at 90 degrees to your hip and you got to close your eyes. It's for time. So I would be working on either the duration of time that I can maintain this position or have a certain amount of time with the fewest amount of touches in terms of like getting my balance. So there's all kinds of different stability tests. It's hard to know which one's going to be best for you. One that I used when I was playing football is I would kneel on a yoga ball and I would get so many catches in a row while kneeling on the yoga ball. My feet were not allowed to touch the ground. So I had to have enough core and enough balance to be able to absorb the catch while staying on the ball. And then body weight strength, it could be so many different things, but there's likely going to be something that is a good indicator for you. One that I really like that is not as common. So you could do something like just air squats or push-ups or pull-ups or dead hangs or anything like that. There's so many different activities. One that I really, really like as a good metric for whether or not you're healthy and your body weight strength is good is a 90-90 lunge stance hold. So you're going to hold yourself in a deep lunge stance where your back leg's shin is parallel with the ground and the thigh of your front leg is parallel with the ground. And you're going to try to hold that as long as you can. I would say if you can make it 90 seconds on both legs, it's a good indicator of health and performance. So that would be a target that I might work for on that. When it comes to our next two up, they're going to be explosiveness exercises. So at our level, at the university level, we have a lot of different tools that we can use for that. So whether it's force plates or dynamometers or velocity trackers, there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can track explosiveness. Maybe you don't have access to those things. So a good way for you to be able to measure that is at the end of a lift, you might do a med ball toss for distance or for height, and you're going to just make sure that you're staying on track with that. Or maybe you have the ability to do broad jumps at the end of practice. So there's going to be a lower leg or leg one, and there's going to be an uppers one. For the upper body, it might be being able to produce so many clap push-ups in time. It could be being able to do so many med ball slams in time. It could be a sit-up catapult for distance, seeing how far you throw, or it could be even a chest pass for distance. There's a lot of different ways that you can measure this. And the reason why I think it's valuable to measure your explosiveness on a regular basis is this is not something that's going to take too much load, especially if you're not doing it too often or you're doing it at the end of a workout or whatever. It's just a way for you to be able to make sure that I'm staying on track with the explosiveness that I want. If I drop in any of these areas, I want to start to explore that. Why? Why am I dropping in those areas? And how can I make sure I stay explosive throughout the year and also make improvements in those areas throughout the year? So I want to have some kind of lower body, some kind of upper body. One that's a really simple one for volleyball that we have used is a triple broad jump for our lower body. And for the upper body, we've done an overhead med ball toss for distance. We don't do these on a regular basis, but that's something that you could do without doing too much damage. Volleyball also tracks the serve speed, so that's a cool way to track your upper body power. You could do the same idea if you're a pitcher in baseball, or if you're a quarterback, is just tracking the speed of your throw. There's a ton. There's so many different ideas out there. Whatever's going to be right for you, I would add that in at least once a week or once every 2 weeks to be able to see where I'm at. And then the top three are going to be some kind of strength standard for your lower body, sort of for power, and then also for upper body. Really, really basic ones that a lot of schools will use is either a squat or a deadlift, some kind of clean or hang clean, and then some kind of bench press or shoulder press. So that's going to be tested on a less frequent basis, probably once a quarter or once a phase in your strength program. This is something that you can work with your strength coach on. If you're doing a lot of this work yourself, you're going to want to set up certain standards, but I would look into what the standards are for my sport. So if I want to be the very best player in my league, and I'm strong enough to play at a league beyond my league. So if I am a high school athlete and I have the lower body, upper body, and power strength of somebody at the university level, it's certainly going to lend itself to helping me to become the very best player in my league. Same idea with these. I'm going to look at like national or international standards when it comes to like a broad jump or a triple broad jump. If I can do that on a regular basis and make sure I'm inching closer and closer to high level standards, that's going to lend itself to me being the type of performer who can perform as the very best in my league. And then when it comes to core and stability and body weight strength, I want these to be foundational. I want to be able to hit high threshold numbers so I can prove that I'm healthy enough to do all of these other things, and I'm maintaining a high level of health every week as I continue my pursuit of becoming the very best player in my league. The last category in these 4 pillars of performance is speed, agility, and quickness. What I would also do, this is similar to what we did with the skill, is I would start with the first ones in mind, the test numbers in mind. There are going to be a few different tests, but some common ones for speed are 40 or 100 or 20 or 10 dashes. These are meter or yard dashes. A good one for power or plyometrics might be like vertical. It could be a bounding test. It could be a skipping test. I mean, you can do skipping to see where you're at. It could be an RSI test. There's all kinds of different tests for power and plyometrics. And then I'm also going to have an agility type test. So I can have shuttles, the pro shuttle, L test. I could have a T test. There's a gajillion of these two out there. Whatever is the one that is most used in your sport, and you'll know because you'll test these things on a regular basis, whatever that is, you're going to aim to reach standards that are going to exceed your level of play. So if I want to be the very best player in my league and I play in high school, then I want to be at a competitive level in each of these performance standards for the next level, for a collegiate. I don't want to be just better than the people that I compete against. I want to be so much better than the people I compete against that it looks like I am dominating. So that's what I would look at, is what are these numbers that I need to have by the time I get to the next level. And then once you know what these tests are, and once you have your thresholds, you've determined like, this is what I am currently doing, this is how much improvement I want to make over this amount of time, and these are the standards I'm working towards, then you can go down and you can look at the bottom. So the bottom 3 are going to be the habits. I'm going to scroll down so you can see a little bit better. They're going to be some of the habits or tests that you can do every day. So if I am literally going to be doing some kind of straight line sprint activity, then I'm probably going to do something like power speed drills for warm up. Or I'm going to do some kind of sprints every day or starts every day, just something that's going to allow me to build the technique that's going to help lend itself to this. The more I do habit on this, the more I work some of the technique, the better I can hack these tests. And by just doing some of these things, like all of these tests are supposed to be indicators of our ability to perform in our sport. But if we do the work that's going to make us good at the test, then the test should also be an indicator. It's not just an indicator that we're good at our sport, but being good at the test and working towards being good at the test is going to also make us good at our sport. So I would have this as a daily habit, some kind of thing. If you're working on vertical or bounding, whatever your test is for power, I would actually work technique on basically every single day. And it might just be part of my warm-up. I'm going to add it as just a little piece to my warm-up. I also might work on things that are going to allow me to have a high level of output. So these could be things that are related to bulletproofing my knees, or it could be things that are related to helping with different tendon strengths and tensile strengths. So whatever this is going to be, these could be bulletproofing, these could be rehearsing the technique. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do here. And it's the same idea for any of these agility tests. Learning how to cut and do the angles well takes practice. And so I would literally set up the test if I could. I would set up the test if I could and literally do the test at least once a week as part of some conditioning that I have in mind, or as part of some work that I want to do. I would, in the very least, add to my warm up something that's going to allow me to work on some of the cuts that I need so that I'm getting better at that. So, working cuts, rehearsing. The more we do these tests, the more that we work on getting good at these tests, the more we're going to be developing the things that are going to help us to become a better athlete, the very best in our league. So being good at these things is important. I would add that into every day as a warm up. That's kind of how I would put it in, or at least as a cool down, or at least part of my everyday in some way, shape, or form. It's going to help me become as good as I can be. And then these middle two, they are going to be more sport specific or gameplay. So if I am faster, quicker, or more powerful, how will that show up in practice or gameplay? So there should be a drill in practice that has a high level of intensity that requires a lot of speed or requires a lot of quickness or explosiveness. And I want to make that repeated drill something that's going to be a metric of my speed and explosiveness. So if I'm winning at a certain drill, like a rebounding drill or a defensive drill or whatever, in basketball, maybe it's winning all of my one-on-ones in football, or maybe it's winning all of the small-sided games in soccer, whatever it is, I'm going to measure something for these two, and they are going to be indicators of speed, agility, and quickness. So I got to find something. I can talk to my coach about this. It's good to say, hey, what drill do we do regularly that would, if I did well at that drill, if I could measure that drill, would prove that I'm improving my speed, agility, and quickness. Those are our performance categories. We're going to move on now to some of our inner qualities, the inner states, because they're also very important for us to plan out. But with even just our performance qualities, you should see that, like, if I'm doing some of these things on a regular basis, I have these habits, I'm working on my fitness habits every week, I'm doing some kind of fundamentals every day or every week, I'm doing some kind of strength metric every week or every day, I'm doing something in my warm-up every week, every day. That's going to allow me to improve in all of these areas. And I'm measuring my ability to take the things that I'm doing in all my strength, my stamina, skill. I'm measuring my ability, and then I'm also seeing how that relates to gameplay or how that relates to the test that we actually do. So if I have all of that measurement and all of that data coming back in, it's really useful. I think the biggest thing that student athletes struggle with is they don't know how to get good, and they don't know when they are getting better. They have no real way of measuring that. The only way that we tend to measure that is our performance in games, which is definitely important. We want to see that our performance is improving, but we have a lot more control over all of the elements and being able to measure those elements to prove that we can get better at these things. So if we're getting better at the core performance elements, we should see our gameplay also shift. We should be more dominant as an athlete. And the more dominant we are as an athlete, the better we'll be able to be at reaching this.